any one or two standing orders that we think is critical for review at this time. I would want us to look at the issues of the IC and the Auditor General reports that have, in my estimation, continue to be of concern to me in wearing another hat as Speaker. I think we need to look back at those standing orders, particularly the standing order as it relates to 73 that covers the Oversight Committee. Member Paula?
Yes, I certainly have an interest in questions and answers. I think there's need for clarification there, and of course the composition of committees of the Parliament.
All right, so please note composition of committees and question and answers to questions, that segment. Any other area? We have mentioned the ones that concern you, Member Guy?
No, I have similar concerns as you, Madam Chair, regarding those two.
You have this, you share the similar concern? Yes, thanks, Member Guy. Can you think of any other? This allows us also to individually read through those standing orders. We can also research in other jurisdictions that are like ours, exactly how those are worded, and we would also look at the similar standing orders in the Senate to see how worded, and then we would be able to come back with our own recommendations for us to put forward to the House. Member Guy, you had another?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The matter of the constituency debates, and I know that each time we have it, there has been the need for the leader of government business to ask for an extension of time. And I think that we should have a better or a more appropriate time in the standing orders to accommodate the constituency debates in terms of the number of minutes that each speaker is allowed to.
The time in the current standing order was 15 minutes, and we had extended to half an hour, where at the 20 minutes and 5 extra? 25 and 5, right, so a maximum of half an hour. And what the approach we took is at the beginning of the constituency debate, we'd move a motion and allow for that time. So yes, it could be one of the areas that we consider. One of the unfortunate things, I must say, in my limited time in the House and observing our practice, the more time we get, the more time we speak, and the more time we need. And I believe that we have to figure out a way to be much more succinct in the critical areas of our presentations generally. I don't find members avail themselves of some of the provisions of the standing orders to be more efficient, yet communicate the information that they need to disseminate to the public. So we really have to look at that, because we have fallen into a culture of believing that we can speak until whenever we are finished. And when I observe some other houses and persons come to the toe of the line, and in 2 minutes they can very sharply, with excellent language and deliberation, convey their message, I believe we have a duty to be far more efficient in how we function. We need to stand in front of the mirror and practice the presentation and ensure it is sharp, and ensure that we are not long-winded and discussing what we don't need to. Now, here is a concern as well, Member Guy. We have 63 of us in the House. For the person who is upstairs, we can hear you very clearly down here. Now, Member Guy, here's one of the concerns, and it is something for us to look at and then have a discussion with the House. We have a set amount of time in a year that we meet. set number of days that we meet. And though the standing orders foresee us meeting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I have been a part of the committee that reviewed our job description as members of parliament and ministers and the expectation of the public as it relates to us and our duties. Now, while we know that our duty is primarily a legislative one, and the standing orders take that into consideration, suggesting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for meetings, and our initial standing order also had Thursday being the day for private members' motions, which would have ensured that despite the sectoral debates, despite the preliminary main budget debate with the Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Opposition Leader, the works, we would have had a lot more time in the House. What has happened to us is our public, our populace, our citizens, our constituents have a different expectation of us. And they expect us to be in the constituency and to oversee activities in the constituency far more than initially was what I would say documented, intended as our role and function. And so we are caught between a rock and a hard place because persons vote for members of parliament that are very present in the constituency, not present in the House. That is just the reality. And we still have a duty to carry out our legislative function. So remember, Guy, if we multiplied 63 by 30 minutes versus 63 by 20 minutes, and equally for the sectoral presentations, if we start to go through a process of seeing what is the time frame it would take, let us verify whether or not we would be able to complete what we would like to do prior to the close of the session in the summer break, because we may find ourselves moving from one year to the next without completing our work. And remember, the legislative agenda in terms of passing of bills is also important. So that is continuous. So we will have to figure that out. We have a lot to think about even in upgrading the standing order. So we may need to look at where we see the parliament going, have some proposed standing orders that we would be able to execute in a different style parliament, where we are able to keep more than one committee meetings at the same time, which we can't do now, where we are able to have more days, and it is something that we can look back to recommend to the House that we actually meet more days. But in the interim, one of the amendments we made just recently was to allow for the main budget debate, the sectoral debate, and we have now given priority to inserting private members' motions for them to be addressed in between, and we have relegated our constituency debate, which really is what we are supposed to be here about as representatives, to go after, so that there is some dedicated time given to the question of private members' bills that are not being heard in the House. So that was the last amendment made. And when we're going through these standing orders, it may well be one of the areas that we need to look back at to see how do we install a day per month, what would we recommend? That becomes the day that we do all our private members' motion in that month and get them out without jeopardizing our constituency debate, which allows for our constituents to hear from us. So that could be another area to add. So Committee Clerk, let's add that as well, covering the private members' bills along with the time for the constituency debates. I think a lot of persons are quite annoyed that we are so tight with time. in respect of persons having their presentations. But I believe that statement by ministers need to be utilized more for some of the presentations to the public, instead of many of our sectoral presentations almost including things that could have been done in statement by a minister. They're actually incorporated in the sectoral presentation. And so hopefully members of the cabinet would be overhearing us at our committee meeting and would really look at it, because they can actually utilize the existing standing orders in a more efficient way. Member Paulel?
Yes, Chairman. Just going back to the issue of time. I remember when we did the review in 2014, one of the issues that confronted us was the fact that the public had seemingly lost interest in what was happening in Parliament, and we were told that because people went on and on. I remember those days, the sectoral debate. There was, and I was on the government side, and there was one speaker who went over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and so we had to curtail that type of exuberance. Yes. In relation to the constituency debates, I think 30 minutes now. Yes, I think member guy might have still been under the impression it was 15, but 30 minutes now, because it wasn't meant to be a report thing of your stewardship. It was to use the opportunity to influence the budget for the ensuing year. And I don't think we have utilized it in that way, nor has the Ministry of Finance treated us in the way that was intended, that you may come here, you make your representation, and somehow we are supposed to trace the actual line item in the budget to the representations that members make. That does not happen. And also in relation to minister statements, I think the time that was allowed, that we have incorporated, is quite sufficient. I would make an appeal, because the Prime Minister reaches that rule every time, and I think probably you might have to allow for more time for certainly the Prime Minister in making a statement to go over the 12 minutes. Probably that needs to be a separate right, and probably we ought not to limit that too much. But certainly for ministers, we need to maintain a tight rein on the length of time that ministers speak. Yeah.
Prime Minister, we'll be happy for that suggestion from you. I do agree. The challenge is ensuring that, as Speaker, the rules are applied to everyone in the same way, and no preference is given outside of the standing orders. I also have a challenge, I'll tell you, as Speaker, with the notion that persons speak until conclusion. Member Brownberg taught me a valuable lesson in never, ever, ever allowing any member of the House to speak until they conclude. Because I remember giving extra time to Member Brownberg one evening, and it then dawned on me, based on the member deciding to continue forever, that if the member chose to continue until the following day, I had already ruled that you could speak until conclusion. And I do not believe that it was ever intended in the standing orders that we allow members who we have established a rule to give a specified and prescribed time to speak, to say we are moving a motion to allow the member to speak until conclusion. It is something we need to look at, because we have to balance in our deliberation the latitude of the Speaker giving too much strictures, but equally allowing too much latitude. And at the end of the day, the motions moved and voted on by members of the House, we want to also ensure that we give credence to that, because ultimately it is my view that the House should always have the ability to vote in respect of the decisions to be taken by the House. So we have to consider all of that and determine if we would like to continue to allow persons to speak until conclusion. Sure. I don't see anything like that in the standing orders. I notice it is something that we have just started to do, and I do believe it is something that we should look back at. All right, so I think we have all of them set. We are gonna again send out the email with confirmation for dates. Hold on, Member Sibley's. And I would like for you to make a recommendation in terms of retreat. The clerk is looking at persons who we could consider for the position, for the consultant. So we'll get back to you on that. We're looking around to see who we can find. And it means we'll have to do some homework as a committee before we meet. We will do the list of standing orders, and then we can prioritize to say which one we will take first, because if we do even an hour each Tuesday before the House sits, we can do one standing order each time or finish it up at the next sitting. All right? So, no, they did confirm. They did both minutes. So Member Paulwell and seconded by Member Sibley's confirm both the minutes of July 19 and May 21. That was the question, please. Member Sibley's?
Yes, I have a recommendation as it relates to the business of the motion being put to the House to talk until a conclusion. And now that you said it, I now understand the risk. Having said, having the House pass this motion for someone to talk until the conclusion, then you would have made a ruling and it would have to follow through. But I'm thinking in order so that persons could have that benefit of completing their statement or announcement, we could amend the standing order to facilitate that by giving the person, like in the standing order. Wait a minute.
No, on a point of order, member, on a point of order, the standing orders already contemplate that. What is happening, why we're having this challenge, is because people do not follow the rule. The speaker is to be given a copy of the presentation prior to the presentation being made. What it would allow is for the speaker to be able to leaf through the remainder of the presentation and be able to make a better decision on the time required to complete. What is happening is persons coming to the House, they do not have a copy of their presentation, or they are making a presentation that they have, well, like I saw recently, there are several books, but the book didn't guide us at all in terms of the presentation. So it is a requirement. It is a requirement that each member who stands to make a statement, to do a bill, to move a motion, to do a debate, they are actually required to provide for the House, for the attention of the Speaker, a copy of the document. All right? It is a requirement. And if that were being practiced as it's supposed to be in keeping with the standing orders, they would not need to say, could we allow a member to speak until conclusion? And coming out of the standing orders review, we would want to re-emphasize maintenance of the rules, Because, Member Siblings, it doesn't make sense for us to establish rules and laws that we do not intend to keep. If we are going to operate in the House with disregard for the standing orders, then it makes no sense to have them, because we are literally establishing as lawmakers an attitude and a mindset that we're making the laws, but they really don't serve any purpose. And even this committee would serve no purpose, and review of the standing orders would serve no purpose, because we do not intend to use them. So, I believe that when we have completed this review and we take our report to the House, we should encourage a debate so that it is understood going forward we would like to have a House that maintains the rules. And I find that as human beings, when the rules are enforced, we change our attitude and we conform.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah.
Remember,
I quite agree with everything that you said. As a matter of fact, I was saying to Member Paul Willett that we need to have strict adherence to the times, because I've seen, and you did mention earlier that we could look at other parliaments and how they operate, but it is strictly observed. When it is 5 minutes, there's no negotiating, and members appreciate that this is the time limit and they work towards it. I'm not saying they're... Yes. Right. So I think the point you made is a very important one. I think it is the crux of the matter that once we set these times, once members get into the attitude of observing, you will find that the presentations will conform to the time, because they know that that is what they have to work with. So rather than extending the time to accommodate it, what will always happen is that at the end, we'll always have to be accommodating the extra time.
Member, I couldn't agree with you more. So, Member Siblings, that's exactly what was happening. What we are observing in the House, and you know it's dangerous. I'll tell you why it's dangerous. The standing orders, though they are simple, are not easy to remember, every single standing order. And what has happened, persons, because they've been in the House for an extended time, get to learn some of them. But the bad thing is, someone who just reads the standing orders and sit in the House, even after 8 years, do not necessarily know the rules, because what they believe is the rules is what they observe being practiced. So the bad practices get concretized in their head as the rule of the House. And so we have to stop that. The other thing I love that the Parliament had started doing, and I would encourage us to go back to it, is to place on the screen a standing order each week. So it allows us, when someone is not using the multipurpose projectors for their own individual presentation, or when we are just coming into the House up to the time that their presentation begins, is to leave the standing order up. I remember some persons quarreled about one particular standing order because they thought we were putting it up to almost give them a joke. And it wasn't. I didn't even notice it was up. It wasn't put up by me. The House should start that practice. So I think we should notify the members and just indicate that we will start from standing order 1, then 2, and we'll continue to rotate, because it allows members while sitting there to just keep reacquainting themselves with the standing orders. All right? So I actually loved the fact that the staff at the Houses of Parliament started that process. It is one that we should go back to. All right? Are there any other suggestions, any other business at this time?
So may I suggest, Madam Speaker, that, Chairman, that as we undertake this work, probably we should start from top right through. And I suspect that we won't be delayed too much in the first set of signing orders, but just to be comprehensive, and we need to come prepared for that. And I agree with you that a retreat is probably necessary.
Thanks, Member Paul. Well appreciated. Are there any other comments, any other business? So you look forward in the coming week to 2 emails. One will detail the proposed meeting dates to be agreed. Member Davis, Member Paulwell, Sibley's Guy had made a commitment to being here for the next 3 meetings, which include this one, so we'll now add 1 more, 3 meetings again. All right, I'm holding them to it.
Sure.
So can we add 1 more? You may not be here.
Sure.
All right, so we will first confirm the next 2 meetings, and then when the email comes, if we can all commit to the next 3 meetings, we will do so. All right, so it is every Tuesday if we are able to hold the slots at 12:30.
So the next 3 would be June 14, 11, June 18.
So that would be June 4, 11, and 18. So look at those. 18 is out?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, and so we could look at June 25th. All right, so let's in the email just confirm for June 25th. Just take the time and look at your diaries. So we'll confirm for the 4th and the 11th, skip the 18th, and we will look back at the 25th and confirm for that. And then we will suggest the retreat. We can, it's going to be rough, but we'll have to make the time. So even if we do the retreat in pieces where we do a 1 day and then we take 10 or 20 standing orders, then we take another time and we do another 20 until we're finished, all of them, all right? So members, may I ask that a member move for adjournment? So moved by Member Guy, so seconded by Member Davis. This meeting now stands adjourned. Thank you, members.